Prophets really need a customer service hotline because if my toaster failed as often as these doomsday predictions, I'd have launched it into the sun by now. Every few years, someone claims the sky is about to crack open, the oceans will boil, or the moon is filing for divorce from Earth. And somehow, people nod like this is perfectly normal Tuesday behavior. Yet here we are, still alive, still paying taxes, and still waiting for even one apocalypse to show up on time. And trust me, if you think that's embarrassing, just wait. The real disasters weren't the prophecies themselves, it's the confidence of the people who made them. 1. In 1844, a preacher named William Miller confidently announced that the world would end on October 22nd, which I guess was incredibly convenient because it gave everyone time to wrap up their fall cleaning. His followers sold everything, abandoned their jobs, and basically treated the apocalypse like a highly anticipated product launch. And then, shocking twist, the world stubbornly refused to explode on schedule. This cosmic no-show became known as the Great Disappointment, which honestly sounds like what historians should call every failed doomsday prediction ever. Miller apologized, but not before inspiring an entire cottage industry of end times are definitely tomorrow, I swear, predictions that would follow. Imagine being so persuasive that you get thousands of people to rearrange their lives around your imaginary countdown clock, only for reality to respond with one giant eye roll. 2. Halley's Comet came barreling through in 1910, and people immediately concluded it must be delivering the universe's eviction notice. Newspapers breathlessly warned that Earth would pass through the comet's deadly cyanide tail, which for some reason people took seriously despite having absolutely no idea what that meant. Snake oil salesmen, America's original influencers, started selling anti-comet pills and bottled comet protection elixirs, which probably tasted like damp basement and broken dreams. Some folks sealed themselves indoors, convinced the air outside would turn them into cosmic corpses. Spoiler, nothing happened. People woke up the next morning breathing oxygen instead of comet juice and had to pretend they never panic purchased apocalypse ointment. To this day, Halley's Comet remains undefeated in the sport of trolling humanity simply by existing. 3. In the 1970s, psychic superstar Jean Dixon, America's favorite horoscope aunt, declared that Armageddon would kick off in 1980. She didn't specify a month, presumably because even professional prophets like to hedge their bets. People listened because she also predicted JFK's assassination, and once you guess one big thing correctly, you apparently get a lifetime pass to be spectacularly wrong. 1980 came and went, and the closest thing we got to Armageddon was polyester fashion. Dixon later revised her prophecy, which is prophet speak for please ignore everything I said earlier. It's amazing how prophets treat failed predictions like software bugs. Just patch, update, and hope no one checked the previous version notes. Humanity survived, but everyone who took Dixon seriously probably still flinches at round numbers. 4. In 1999, Nostradamus fans became convinced that his famously vague poetry predicted the world would end in July. Why July? Because Nostradamus wrote something about the sky's great king of terror arriving and, well, that kind of sounded like summer vacation. People stockpiled food, water, and probably too many VHS copies of Independence Day. When July arrived, the only terrifying sky king anyone saw was the sun giving everyone aggressive sunburns. Nostradamus didn't say anything specific because specificity ruins the whole business model. And the best part, people didn't learn their lesson. They just shrugged and said, well, maybe he meant another July. Nothing says prophetic authority like followers who think the universe runs on a flexible, rolling deadline. 5. In 2011, Harold Camping pulled off the spiritual equivalent of announcing a surprise party and then forgetting to show up. He promised the rapture would occur on May 21st, complete with earthquakes, plagues, and presumably some very confused cats, wondering where their owners went. His followers put up billboards, emptied their bank accounts, and drove around with "The end is near," painted on their cars, which aged about as well as a Blockbuster membership card. When nothing happened, camping simply recalculated, proving that apocalypse math is basically just long division done with crayons. He moved the date to October, but that also fizzled. At this point, even God must have been embarrassed on his behalf. 6. In 2000, humanity launched itself into full scale panic over the Y2K bug, a technological prophecy that claimed computers would explode, planes would fall from the sky, and your microwave would gain consciousness and unionize. Tech companies made billions selling Y2K readiness services, which mostly involved updating clocks and pretending to understand code written in 1974. People hoarded canned goods as if Campbell's soup was the only currency that would survive the new millennium. Midnight struck, and nothing happened. The only casualties were confused OCT workers who had to pretend their all-nighters were necessary. So, yes, the first major prophecy of the 2000s was essentially fear the number change. Inspiring stuff. 7. The Mayan 2012 prophecy was the Super Bowl of modern doomsday culture. People genuinely believed an ancient civilization predicted Earth would implode just because their calendar stopped, much like assuming a microwave stops counting down because it's ashamed of you. Movie studios cashed in, survival bunkers sold out. New Age influencers invented entire careers explaining how planetary vibrations were going to reverse charge our spiritual USB ports. And then December 21st, 2012 arrived, and the only apocalypse was the emotional meltdown of conspiracy theorists, realizing they still had to go to work on Monday. Turns out the Mayans didn't predict the end of the world. They just stopped carving because stone is heavy and calendars are boring. 8. In the 1980s, televangelist Pat Robertson confidently announced that the world would end in 1982. He didn't hedge or waffle, he straight up said it would happen. And people believed him because nothing says reliable authority like someone on cable TV wearing a suit the color of expired mayonnaise. When 1982 passed uneventfully, Robertson casually moved on, as if he hadn't just warned millions of people that Earth had an expiration date. It's like setting your kitchen on fire, shrugging, and saying, well, dinner's still at 6. What's wild is that he kept his audience. Apparently, being wrong about the apocalypse is only a problem if you're a weather forecaster. 9. Isaac Newton, yes, the gravity guy, spent a surprising amount of time doing biblical math and confidently predicted the world would end in 2060. And honestly, it's comforting to know that even geniuses sometimes use their powers for nonsense. Newton wrote extensively about how biblical timelines proved Earth had a hard stop like a Netflix subscription. He even warned that predicting the end too early would lead to ridicule, which is deliciously ironic coming from someone making a prophecy with the confidence of a man who once poked his own eye with a needle to study light. The 2060 prediction is still floating around, waiting to disappoint another generation of people who mistake smart at physics for knows the cosmic schedule. 10. In 1997, the Heaven's Gate cult believed a spaceship was hiding behind Comet Hale-Bopp, ready to scoop up enlightened souls like some kind of cosmic Uber XL. Their leader insisted Earth was about to be recycled, which is definitely not a phrase you ever want to hear from someone controlling your entire belief system. Members prepared by buying identical outfits, eating identical meals, and shaving their heads, not because it mattered, but because cults love a good uniform. The tragedy that followed was horrific, but the prophecy itself remains one of the most bizarre examples of science fiction fan fiction taken painfully literally. Apparently, all it takes is one charismatic voice to convince people a comet is basically the galaxy's airport shuttle. 11. In the 1920s, a British psychic named Charles Lawfed convinced thousands that the world would end because the sun was running low on light, which is adorable because apparently he thought the sun was a household flashlight running on two sad AA batteries. He fully expected darkness to swallow humanity like a cosmic power outage. People panicked, wrote letters, and made preparations for a world without sunlight. ignoring the tiny detail that the sun is a 4.6 billion-year-old nuclear furnace and not an appliance from Sears. When light continued to pour from the sky, Lafayette didn't apologize. He just kept prophesying, proving that some people never learn that predicting the universe's shutdown schedule is well above their pay grade. 12. In 1524, astrologers predicted that a massive flood would destroy Earth. They studied planetary alignments, came up with equations, and confidently declared humanity doomed, which is impressive given that they also believed bathing too often weakened the soul. Europeans panicked, building boats, stocking food, and relocating to higher ground. One German noble even constructed a 3-story ark because nothing screams confidence like building a yacht for the apocalypse. Then came the big day, and not only did the world not flood, it barely drizzled. People stood outside staring at the sky like angry customers waiting for a manager. The prophecy failed, but astrologers kept their jobs anyway, proving that being wrong in style apparently counts as accuracy. 13. In the year 1000, medieval Europe collectively freaked out because people assumed nice round numbers must be spiritually significant. Priests preached doom, peasants panicked, and kings started acting like end times party planners. Crops were abandoned, confessions skyrocketed, and everyone waited for God to show up with a clipboard and a final exam. When January 1st came and absolutely nothing happened, people awkwardly shuffled back to their daily lives, pretending they definitely did not spend the previous year preparing to meet the divine auditor. It remains one of history's earliest examples of humanity panicking over the equivalent of an odometer rollover. 14. In 1988, author Edgar Whisenant released a book titled 88, Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988, because nothing says credibility like slapping a precise date on the apocalypse and selling it like a seasonal cookbook. Millions of copies circulated, churches held seminars, and people prepared for liftoff. Then, 1988 ended without a single human skyrocketing into heaven. So Wisenant did what any self-respecting failed prophet does. He published 89 reasons why the rapture will be in 1989. At this point, he was basically speedrunning apocalyptic sequels like a studio chasing box office returns. Spoiler, he was wrong again. And again, the man was basically the Madden franchise of failed prophecies. Same plot every year, zero results. 15. In the 1830s, Mormon leader Joseph Smith reportedly predicted that the second coming would occur within 56 years, before 1891. His followers took it seriously, preparing mentally, spiritually, and probably financially for a divinely scheduled upheaval. But as with most apocalyptic countdowns, the universe politely declined the invitation. 1891 arrived, nothing happened, and leadership quietly shifted focus to more long-term goals, like building communities and not being wiped out by cosmic fire. To be fair, Smith never pretended to be infallible, but history still treats this one like a classic example of maybe don't schedule the apocalypse like it's a dentist appointment. The good news? Humanity survived. The bad news? So did the tradition of people making predictions that age like milk in a sauna. 16. In 1914, a British psychic named Nellie Dryden announced that a massive earthquake would rip the British Isles in half on December 23rd, which is honestly rude timing because people were already stressed about Christmas shopping, but Nellie insisted she felt the tectonic doom in her bones, a phrase that translates loosely to "I needed attention and newspapers were bored." People panicked, left cities, and even camped in open fields because, as we all know, the safest place to be during an earthquake is apparently a cold, muddy pasture. When the day came and buildings stayed upright, Nellie claimed the disaster was simply postponed, like the earth got stuck in traffic. The only thing that actually cracked that day was her credibility, which, to be fair, wasn't exactly built on bedrock. 17. In the 1970s, a group of self-proclaimed cosmic energy interpreters declared that a mysterious planet named Nibiru would pass near Earth and cause massive destruction. They insisted NASA was hiding the truth, Because, of course, NASA, the group that can barely agree on launch schedules, is secretly coordinating intergalactic cover ups. People bought books, attended seminars, and stared nervously at the sky like anxious meerkats. And when Nibiru stubbornly refused to appear, the prophets explained that the planet was simply vibrationally invisible, which is the same excuse I give when someone asks why they never see me at the gym. Amazingly, the theory still resurfaces every few years, proving that sometimes a prophecy doesn't need evidence. It just needs a loyal fan club with a Wi Fi connection. 18. In 1806, an English hen named the Prophet Hen of Leeds became a national sensation when she allegedly laid eggs with the words Christ is coming painted on them. People flocked to see this poultry prophet, convinced the apocalypse was literally hatching on a farm. Turns out the owner had been writing on the eggs with acid and reinserting them into the chicken, which is somehow both more disgusting and more embarrassing than any supernatural explanation. When the hoax was exposed, everyone pretended they definitely hadn't just taken religious advice from a bird whose greatest achievement was walking into walls. It's still one of history's finest reminders that if your spiritual guidance comes from a chicken, the apocalypse is probably the least of your problems. 19. In 1991, South Korean religious leader Lee Jae-rim confidently declared the rapture would occur on October 28th. Followers wore matching outfits, sold their possessions, and gathered for the ascension, which is a bold move considering airplanes exist and would have been a safer bet. When the world remained painfully normal, Rim didn't apologize. He was arrested for fraud because he'd been using the money from followers' donations to invest in bonds set to mature after the supposed apocalypse. Imagine believing so little in your own prophecy that you're building a post-world financial portfolio. If hypocrisy were a sport, this man would have taken home an Olympic gold medal. 20. In 1346, European astrologers announced a coming planetary alignment that would unleash a deadly plague across the continent. And for once, they were accidentally not entirely wrong. But here's the catch. The alignment didn't cause the plague. Fleas and rats did, because the Middle Ages was basically one giant sanitation crime scene. Still, people credited the astrologers for predicting it, even though their cosmic explanation was about as scientifically accurate as blaming Mercury retrograde for your broken dishwasher. And when asked how the planets could cause such devastation, astrologers mostly shrugged and pointed at charts that looked like doodles from a bored teenager. It's the historical equivalent of guessing on a test and accidentally getting the answer right, then insisting you're a genius. 21. In 1800, a New England preacher named Elijah Snow insisted that the apocalypse would occur on January 1st because if there's one thing God loves, it's clean calendar symmetry. Snow's followers prepared for divine judgment while Snow himself calmly waited outside, ready to greet Christ like he'd RSVP'd early. Midnight passed, nothing. By dawn, the apocalypse was still a no-show, perhaps because God, like most people, hates mornings. Snow then claimed he'd simply misread the signs, which is prophet code for my math was bad and my ego is worse. The congregation quietly dispersed, probably trying to figure out how to explain to neighbors why they'd spent New Year's Eve waiting for the sky to explode. 22. In the early 20th century, British psychic Charles Piazzi Smythe claimed that the Great Pyramid encoded exact prophetic dates for the end of the world, because apparently sandstone blocks make great calendars if you squint hard enough. He measured corridors, angles, and chamber lengths like he was doing ancient geometry cosplay, then declared the apocalypse scheduled for 1881. When 1881 politely declined to implode, he revised the date using updated pyramid math, which is just regular math, but wronger. Eventually, he gave up, leaving behind hundreds of pages of measurements that proved absolutely nothing, except that some people will see hidden messages anywhere. Walls, geometry, grocery receipts. The pyramid survived. Smith's credibility did not. 23. In 1982, a rare planetary alignment called the Jupiter effect led to a best-selling book claiming earthquakes would devastate Earth as gravitational tensions ripped the crust apart. Scientists tried explaining that planets aligning doesn't actually stress Earth any more than my tax bill stresses the moon, but people bought the book anyway because fear sells better than physics. When the big day arrived and absolutely nothing happened, the authors acted stunned, like the universe had forgotten its lines. One even published a follow up trying to reframe the failure as a partial success, which is creative but still wrong. Like calling a plane crash unexpected horizontal landing. The alignment passed, Earth kept spinning, the book kept selling. Proof that humanity loves a good disaster, even if it's imaginary. 24. In the late 1800s, a Russian mystic named Helena Blavatsky confidently assured her followers that the world would transition into a new, enlightened era by the early 20th century. And while we did technically get electricity, jazz, and peanut butter, we also got world wars, global pandemics, and fashion choices that still haunt vintage photos. Blavatsky envisioned a peaceful spiritual evolution. What she got was a century that looked like humanity was competing to see how many bad decisions it could fit between two calendar dates. Her prophecy wasn't so much wrong as tragically optimistic, like predicting your toddler will become a neurosurgeon based on the way they just stuck your car keys into a toaster. 25. In 1874, Charles Taze Russell predicted the invisible return of Christ. Yes, invisible, because nothing simplifies a prophecy like making it impossible to verify. He explained that Christ had returned spiritually and that physical evidence was optional, which is frankly the greatest loophole ever engineered by a religious leader. When people asked why the world looked exactly the same, Russell basically answered, "Well, you can't see it, but trust me, huge things are happening." This is the prophecy equivalent of claiming you definitely went to the gym, but unfortunately forgot to take any photos, feel any soreness, or experience any physical improvement. A truly bulletproof system. 26. In 1736, mathematician William Whiston insisted a massive comet would smash into Earth on October 16th. Londoners panicked, flocking to churches and buying comet insurance, which was the 18th century version of a scammy extended warranty. Whiston, meanwhile, lectured confidently about how water vapors in the comet's tail would ignite Earth's atmosphere, proving he understood comets about as well as he understood humility. When the day passed quietly, Whiston insisted that God had postponed the disaster as an act of mercy, which is a convenient way of saying, I guessed wrong and the universe didn't cooperate. Honestly, the only burning that day was Whiston's reputation slowly going up in theoretical flames. 27. In the 1990s, psychic Gordon Michael Scallion predicted that massive earthquakes would reshape entire continents, splitting the United States in half and turning Kansas into an island paradise. Millions listened to him describe maps that looked like Atlantis fan fiction, and some people even moved to safer zones, which, according to Scallion, were conveniently near locations where he already had followers. When the 1990s ended with the U.S., still annoyingly intact, Scallion blamed humanity's vibrational resistance, which sounds like a sci-fi explanation for poor Wi-Fi. His followers remained loyal, proving that once you've rearranged your life for a prophecy, admitting you were wrong is apparently harder than rewriting global geography. 28. In 2004, a Nigerian preacher predicted that Jesus would return before the end of the year. Not spiritually, not symbolically, but physically, like a cosmic celebrity making a surprise appearance on Earth's red carpet. His followers waited patiently, even preparing a welcome event, which is adorable in the saddest possible way. When December 31st came and Jesus didn't materialize, the preacher insisted he'd been misinterpreted, which is prophet speak for I said what I said, but please don't leave. The congregation shrugged and stayed, proving that some people treat failed prophecies the way sports fans treat losing teams: loyalty, denial, and a lot of maybe next year. 29. In 1919, meteorologist Albert Porta predicted that a rare planetary alignment would generate catastrophic sunspots that would ignite Earth's atmosphere on December 17th. People genuinely believed the planet would combust like a cheap toaster, and newspapers printed dramatic illustrations because fear sells better than accuracy. When December 17th arrived and Earth remained stunningly unignited, Porta's career caught fire instead, in the metaphorical, unemployment adjacent sense. He was mocked so relentlessly that he quit meteorology altogether, which, considering the field's accuracy record, seems a bit unfair. Ironically, his prophecy was so wrong that it became famous, proving that sometimes failure really is the best form of marketing. 30. In 1975, the Watchtower Society declared that humanity was entering its final months before Armageddon, which is bold considering they based this on a combination of biblical math and wishful thinking. Followers sold homes, postponed surgeries, and canceled life plans because why repair your roof when the universe is about to do a full remodel? When 1975 turned out to be aggressively ordinary, leadership blamed followers for misunderstanding the prophecy, which is a delicate way of saying, you believed us too hard. To this day, the organization sidesteps the topic like someone pretending not to recognize an X at the grocery store. 31. In 1910, author Camille Flammarion predicted that Earth passing through Halley's comet tail would cause widespread devastation because the comet tail supposedly contained cyanogen gas, a fun little chemical also found in actual poison. People panicked, bought comet pills, and prayed, all while Flammarion confidently spoke about cosmic toxic clouds, like he was the universe's least competent weather reporter. When the day came and nobody keeled over from celestial fumes, he simply moved on, leaving behind a legacy of fear-mongering that aged like yogurt on a radiator. The comet passed, humanity survived, and Flammarion's prophecy joined the endless pile of spectacularly wrong predictions delivered with absolute confidence, which might as well be the subtitle of human history. And there you have it, a grand tour of humanity confidently sprinting face first into the brick wall of its own imagination. If you've got an even dumber prophecy, prediction, or psychic faceplant, drop it in the comments so we can all suffer together. Vote for the one here that failed the hardest. And if you enjoyed this guided stroll through cosmic nonsense, hit like and subscribe because clearly the madness isn't slowing down anytime soon.